protest committee, the votes, if one vote is protested another, if they were not able to settle it on the water, it has to come back because nobody will yield on the water. Then you have a committee, and that's a whole other discussion. It needs 3 or 4 members that were not involved with the race, listen to the claims made. So I was on starboard. I was in the vicinity of this mark, and he just cut across me, and I had to veer off, and I protest that. So you explain the things, and if there's any evidence, if you can collect any evidence or witness reports, then that helps. Then that race committee, that protest committee, makes a determination of who was in the right, who was in the wrong, and what the redress would be.
Okay, so lastly,
And then if there can be, where it seems that there can be no resolution on it that way, it's very simply taken care of. It's pistols at 10 paces.
That works.
on the water. But anyway,
Aiming at their boat hull.
so this is a checklist I created for the race committee, and you can see my scribbles down here because I'd like to know what the tide's up to and what it's doing on Saturday and Sunday. So that's pretty important, and how much the wind is. So I make a notation of the wind, the expected wind, and then the tide for that day. And then hopefully all this is, oh, there's no bear spray on this, but anyway. You know, we've got watches and radios and wind meters and bungees and ties, all kinds of rope. Notice of the race, you need your sailing instructions with you, an air pump. Our hippity hop is our mark for the start line. And then just the mark weights, you don't want to leave without those. And so gloves, and you sunscreen, bug spray. And so everything's here, and we check
Emergency provisions.
yes, that too. As much food as you can load into the committee boat. So that is it for me. Do we have any questions?
Lily, if you send me that and a copy of that, I can put it together in a little package to put on the Facebook page.
Yeah, sure.
If people want it.
I can do that.
I think I can do that.
Okay.
We didn't talk much about the course itself, the layout. I drew the idea of a windward leeward. We do that a lot here. We have windward leeward races. You always start to windward, but the tricky part is getting the committee boat and then using the high technology, to figure out which way the wind's coming from. So you're on the boat and you're seeing which way the wind's coming from. And you'd like to have, for a true windward leeward, you want this mark up here, which is called the windward mark, you want that directly upwind from the start line. Sometimes it's right upwind from that flag. You could put it anywhere along here. You'd like to get it directly upwind. You'd like to get a starting line that's perpendicular to the wind. So that's why she's using the compass here. If she knows which direction the wind is coming from, she can kind of sight down this and say, you know, the wind is 150 degrees. And then she can point the mark boat to go exactly in that direction, and she can tell them to go starboard or port, farther out, come back. So she's got to decide on the range, and as Harry said, you got to find safe water where there's enough water for the boats to go around it. You've got to have enough water to drop the anchor, but not too much water, because if it's too deep, you'll have a hard time getting the anchor to hold. So you're looking for a good spot, and then you drop this other mark perpendicular from that. So if it was 150 degrees, then she's going to go off 90 degrees from that, 60 degrees, and then she'll sight down that and have the mark boat drop the other end of the start line. So one end of the start line is that flag, and the other end of the start line is this mark. We usually use kind of a round thing, a hippity hop they call it. Sometimes it's white, sometimes it's red. And that distance there, that is the question that Kelly had. How long should that start line be?
There is a calculation of how many boats are in the race.
Based on the number of boats and the size of the boats. Yeah, it's usually not real long, but if you stack 10 boats, if there's 10 boats and they all want to start at the same time, you've got to have enough room for them to all fit across the line. They won't all be able to go right behind each other. They'll want to be going right next to each other. So if you've got boats that are 10 feet wide and you've got 10 of them, you need like 100 feet, right? There is a guide, and I don't know what it is. There's a calculation you make, and you decide how far that should be.
We asked that question once and got an answer, but what was the answer?
I don't remember the answer.
And on the marked boat, again, it is very important to try to definitely gauge the length of your road from your anchor to your mark, because that deviation will become very important unless you want the committee boat calling you to tell you to pick it up and reposition it 5, 6, 7 times.
And Lily, why would you move it for the next race? What would the reason be?
Move what?
The mark. What would your reason
I don't
be?
move the start mark.
No, if you were to move the TEP.
Wind direction change.
Right,
Yeah.
the
Tide change,
windward
yeah.
of the leeward mark.
Yeah.
Two
That may
reasons.
change.
If the wind was light and the course was too long, or the wind was picked up and the course was too short, you could lengthen the course by extending the mark, or you could shorten the course by bringing a mark.
And then also using government marks to round.
Does anybody have that handout that lists the formula for the start line? And I did know it, and it just isn't coming to me.
These are pretty popular to put the start line somewhere between a windward and a leeward mark. This is a leeward mark. And this kind of race, you start here, you tack to windward. Usually you go around, keeping it to port, and then you can go straight back, downwind. You can do a run, and then you might come around to port, and then you come up and you finish. So that's a typical one loop windward leeward. Oops, sorry, got to check here.
Kelly found the.
Lily.
It's
What do you find it?
number of boats times the boat length times the multiplying factor, depending on the type of boat. Like,
Can you say that again?
It says it more simply in here, and I
it's the
Is
number
that one of
of,
those less is more?
So 10 boats.
yeah, 10
Yeah.
boats times the boat length. So if you're doing J24s, it's 10 times 24 times the multiplying factor, which is specific for the class of the boats.
So if you've got a mixture of boats, then you have to figure an average on that.
Yeah, it's a mixture of boats, that doesn't work, right?
Right, well, you just have to kind of figure an
it's an
average.
estimate.
Yeah,
for the-
it's
Yeah, I'm
an
just
average.
not finding it.
And then add,
I can get that.
Yeah, you get average of boats.
The other thing,
I'm good at that.
the other thing I didn't realize was, with the marks, some of the marks had a weight closer to the top, and I think they've been lost over time. But you need those because if you've got a long road coming away from your mark, it can be grabbed by a rounding boat. So if you have a counterweight directly below your mark, then it kind of sets it a little better in the water to pass around.
I think we've all caught a mark before.
Yeah, so that would be a good thing to invest in the future.
For us, on ours.
Yeah. Any questions? I'm putting people to sleep, so. Any other questions? Anything we need to know?
How long is a typical regatta? Like if it's a windward leeward once around, like in youth sailing, we usually do 12 to 15 minutes. Anything less than 12, we would want them to do twice around. So how long generally for the big boats?
I like to have the boats on the course an hour.
Okay.
So if my fastest boats finish in 45 minutes, I'm thinking I need to make it a little bit longer for them. Maybe give them so if there's a government mark further out that's safe to round, I might think about explaining that over the radio to them, which will be impossible. But that is what I would rather do then move the mark. And especially if the B boats, in our case, the B boats are cruisers and they take a little bit longer. If they finish in an hour, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, that's really a good time for them. So depending on if the wind is still strong, I might leave the marks where they are. So about an hour per race, maybe a little bit more, is not bad. And you want to do 3 of those if possible. But in the middle of that, probably you're going to have the tide switch. And the wind might change. So there's lots of things that get readjusted on the water. Any other questions? Thank you for your attention. This has been great. I got to talk forever.
How many people are gonna volunteer to be on the committee boat? That's the whole idea.
Great, thank you. That'd be fabulous.
Good presentation.
All right, turn that camera off.
So yeah, if anybody wants those instructions that Lili passed around,